So I'll just say it's our pleasure to welcome you all, many of you for the second time, but for those who are just joining us, welcome again to our webinars on Anton 3. We're so excited to be able to bring this system to the community. And so now we're going to, my colleague Marcela Madrid, who with me leads the NIH award that provides operational funding for Anton 3. With generous support from D.E. Shaw Research, who provides the system to us at no cost, and a lot of also support from their side. So we're grateful again for our partnership with them. And Marcela is going to talk about how to be successful or write the best proposal you can for your time on getting time on Anton 3.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Marcela Madrid, and the way to reach us is through this email, antonsupport@psc.edu, if you have any further questions after the talk or whenever. So in this webinar, I will try to explain who can apply for computer time on Anton, and I will try to give some tips so that your proposal can be as successful as possible. So for those who didn't attend the previous talk, Anton is a special purpose supercomputer for molecular dynamics systems of biological systems, which dramatically increases the speed of the simulations. And it has been designed by DESRES Shaw Research and is hosted at the PSC with support from NIH, and is made available without cost to researchers associated with US universities and other not-for-profit institutions. So I will go into more detail about who qualifies to apply, and you can find more information at the Anton link, which is psc.edu/resources/Anton, and you can find the request for proposals there also. So Anton enables breakthrough science because it can in a few days, a researcher can can obtain results that would take years of continuous running on any other resource, reaching time scales of hundreds of microseconds. And is utilized for diverse biomolecular research. Traditionally, Anton systems at PSC have been used to simulate nucleic acids, lipids, proteins, nanostructures composed of nucleic acids or proteins. It has been used for force field development and also for generation of long trajectories, which can then be analyzed using AI methods or to improve AI methods. So who can benefit from running on Anton? Researchers who need long time scale simulations approaching millisecond long of biological systems. And to get access to Anton, you would submit a competitive proposal. The request for proposals are issued once a year. This is our first RFP for Anton 3, and the deadline to apply is October 14. We recommend that you begin the submission process a couple of days before the deadline, because you will need to create an account at PSC in order, an account on the system in order to be able to submit the proposal. So to make sure that everything is smooth, you can create that account before the deadline. So again, I put here the link for the RFP and the deadline. And so any researcher, any principal investigator, the principal investigator must be a faculty or staff member at US academic or not-for-profit research institution. This means a grad student or postdoc cannot be a PI, but the qualified advisor can apply on their behalf and then ask that the person be included into his grant. International collaborations are also allowed, but the principal investigator must be associated, as I said, with a US university or other not-for-profit institution. This is very important because it's a source of problems. Usually every year, each investigator can serve as a PI for only one application in a given allocation round. And if there is a couple that is PI and co-PI, they must clearly demonstrate in the proposal that the research efforts are distinct and independent of each other, and it's not just doubling the resources for one person. Researchers with no previous experience on Anton are encouraged to apply. In fact, 25% of the total allocated time is reserved for PIs that have no previous experience on Anton systems. So we welcome new users, and so Anton allows MD simulations over timescales that approach milliseconds, and so it will fundamentally change the types of questions that can be asked. And so it will be important in the proposal to explain, to demonstrate that you are expecting to achieve breakthrough scientific results that cannot be achieved in any other supercomputer. That's one of the most important tips for a successful proposal. We are looking for breakthrough science that cannot be done anywhere else. Then the second point is to make sure that the system meets the technical requirements to run on Anton, which I will explain in more detail in the next slides. And provide all requested information in all the required RFP sections. And again, contact us in case of doubts to this email. The proposal should be between 2 and 6 pages in length, not including the references. And you can submit up to 2 additional documents in PDF format, but remember that the proposal itself has to be self-contained. The reviewers are not required to look outside the proposal. And grantsmanship is important for the proposal. So if you look at the RFP that we have online, you will see that it consists, the main proposal document should consist of 7 sections. I will jump directly to number 4 because the other ones are self-explanatory. So the section number 4, which should be 2 pages maximum, should explain why Anton is necessary for the planned project, why the project could not be efficiently completed on conventional supercomputers or GPU clusters, and the scientific impact of the proposed project. So the project should focus exclusively on questions that will greatly take advantage of Anton's unique capabilities. And you need to just justify why you require access to Anton, as I said. And usually this is because your project needs long MD simulations approaching milliseconds long or hundreds of microseconds that are not feasible on conventional systems, and that the phenomena that you want to observe cannot be observed at shorter simulations. So that should all go into section 4 of the proposal. The section 5 is the project feasibility and team qualifications, also 2 pages maximum. And here you need to address 5 points that are outlined in the RFP, which are demonstrate that your system can run on Anton, basically, which means the simulations must be standard MD in constant NVE, constant NPE or NVT ensembles. They should consist of protein, DNA, RNA, lipids, waters, and standard ions. And you could have a ligand or a costume molecule, and then we will help you get the force fields that will to run on Anton in those cases. It needs to have periodic boundary conditions in explicit water. The simulation cell must have only right angles, and the minimum per side should be 50 angstroms. The force fields should be variants of standard non-polarizable charm or amber biomolecular force fields, and this is described in detail in the RFP. And the simulation should be long enough that it will not finish in 1 hour of Anton, because that will be too short, too small of a simulation for the effort that you will put into running on Anton. State whether the proposed system has already been built and equilibrated, and if not, provide evidence that it can be successfully built and simulated. Describe the expertise and experience of the researcher, and as I mentioned before, if there is a co-PI on a proposal, explain that the work described in the proposal will be conducted primarily in the PI's lab.
Marcella, can I make one quick point on that last slide?
Yes.
On that number 5, where we said simulations will not finish in less than 1 hour on Anton. Basically, what we're saying there is it kind of goes along. It maybe goes without saying, because we're saying what we're looking for are long time scale simulations, but sometimes folks will propose lots of shorter simulations. And so we're just putting a very, very sort of, the minimum lower bound on, time. If you're proposing a time scale for your individual simulations that would finish in less than an hour on Anton, that's very extreme. We will not even consider that. But in general, they should be much longer anyway, because we're looking for things that really need long time scale. Not just sampling a bunch of systems with very short trajectories. That can be done better other places. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. And in the RFP, we explicitly show an example of what will be this kind of short simulation. As described in the previous talk, you have the ability to apply a uniform constant electric field, position restraints, or enhanced sampling. And it's also explained in the RFP. And then the section number 6 of the proposal is the requested resources. Here is where you calculate how much computer time you will need. And it will be expressed in terms of Anton machine days. If you are an Anton user, you may remember that we used to require MD simulation units. We no longer do that. We have simplified to machine days. And so you need to provide a strong argument about the length and number of simulations that you are proposing. And to do this, you will go to the RFP, which has a table with the number of atoms and the performance in microseconds per machine day. So based on this, you can calculate for your system of a similar size, how many machine days it will need per microsecond. And you for example, the maximum that you can request is 9.1 machine days. And you need to show the calculations in your proposal, so it is easy to see how you made the estimates. So in the proposal, we explain that the maximum is 9.1 machine days, and then there is you are advised to target that number or half that. And so for new PIs, that's all that is needed in the proposal. If you are coming back because you have a previous allocation on Anton 2, then you need the point number 7, which is the progress report. And so it's required only for PIs with previous allocations, and you need to describe how the previous allocation was used. If you, for some reason, it was underutilized, please explain why. because there could be extenuating circumstances, and explain any digressions of what you had originally proposed. And again, the progress report should be self-contained so that you could accompany documents, but the reviewers are not required to go outside the proposal. Feel free to contact us, please, if you have custom parameters or molecules that you are not sure that can be run because they are not in the standard distribution of the supported force fields. If you have many restraints, or if the shape of your simulation cell is much larger in one dimension than the others. And so this is our email for contact. And now I explain what points you should touch on to make sure that the proposal has the best impact. And now I will describe what are common problems. Poor grantsmanship is number one, which includes the lack of clear hypothesis or the lack of explanation of why the proposed system is important for the contributions in your field. And also insufficient justification. Again, this problem of PI and co-PI pair, the proposals should be very different. If one is a PI on one and co-PI on the other, and then they switch. Justify clearly the number of requested simulation units using the benchmarks that are online. And the need for Anton over a standard supercomputing cluster or GPU cluster, and why your prior allocation has been unused. And try to make the best progress report that you can if you are coming back. And so once you have written your proposal, you will submit it through the portal. It's explained in the RFP. Recall that the simulation, that the deadline is October 14, submitted a few days prior to create the account that you need on the system. So the proposals will be first reviewed internally at PSC to make sure that there are no missing documents and that they are feasible. And then they are sent to a review panel, which is convened by the National Academy of Sciences. The process is rigorous and transparent. And if you are notified of the acceptance, you will receive information about how to log into Anton, the documentation, and how to get started. So expect a notice of proposal acceptance by the end of January. The full NAS report is also published online. The allocations are for 1 year only. And you can access your files for an extra year after that. We are targeting starting day in March 2025. And we will be offering a Getting Started workshop by invitation to all who have been accepted to run on Anton. And so this Getting Started workshop is very important because it's hands-on and it's how you get started running most of the time. We ask that you acknowledge Anton in all publications resulting from this work, and we collect all publications and PhD theses, so please send us email when you publish. And the trajectories are generated on Anton and all their associated data are kept private until publication or after 1 year after the end of the allocation, and then they will be published in a database that we are creating. So we always try to ask before making the trajectories public. The slides and the RFP. The RFP is here. The slides will be there soon. And please fill out the survey. And we wish you best of luck. And I will be happy to answer questions now. I don't know if there are any.
Thanks, Marcela. I did answer a couple of questions in the chat. Yeah, the RFP has all the different ensembles. MPT is definitely supported, and that is on the RFP. So no question there. MPT is fine. And there was a question about clarifying the progress report. We don't expect people to go back all the way to Anton 1 with your progress reports, so only Anton 2, previous Anton 2 users have to submit that. But if you had Anton 1 experience, that could be useful to highlight when you describe your group's expertise in the main proposal.
Yeah, but it's not, it's not required to write a progress report for Anton, but you are welcome to do it if you have exciting results.
So other questions? So a question about quantum. There's no support for quantum on Anton 3.
Yeah, so I missed NPT in my slide.
Maybe, I'm not sure, Marcella.
Okay.
Yeah, so just only classical MD simulation on Anton 3.
Did that work?
It's coming up. Yeah, so let me so I'm going to answer this next question real quick about it. So is it okay to run a number of simulations on Anton as long as they're longer than 1 hour? So again, a lot will be up to the 1 hour is like, we're just stopping ridiculous things at the 1 hour that where like the overhead of getting the system ready would be a significant portion of use up a significant portion of your total runtime, because we're running like a bunch of these 1 hour simulations over and over again. And so they don't, so anyway, so that is a minimum, just bare minimum. But the real key is, why are you using Anton 3? And can you justify the length of those simulations in the context of Anton 3? Could you, or is it short enough that you really should be doing this on a bunch of GPUs that are just running a bunch of simulations scattered across a bunch of different systems in parallel, rather than using this big workhorse that you can make single trajectories go really fast. So you just want to make sure you're justifying that scientifically in the context of why Anton 3 versus other resources that are available. So that's like a very bare minimum. And the bigger question are sort of the scientific questions and the questions of, is this a good use of Anton 3? So yes, you definitely can, but you should just ask, should I? And given what Anton 3 can do. And so that'll be up, that's the kind of things the reviewers will be looking at as they assess the proposals. Okay, Ken, did you want to speak to your?
Oh crap. I just wanted to show that there's an obvious spot where Anton 3 beats all comers by a lot, and this is an argument for you can't do this on any other hardware. So it's this million atom system. It's basically 100 times faster than anything else that exists. And 2 million atoms is like 50 times faster. So there's the reason that you pick this size of machine with this size of sweet spot is because there's this hole in what other people can do. That was all I wanted to share.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we're trying to hit the sweet spot there, but this, it's not, again, we're interested in hearing from the community, and it doesn't have to be just, we don't have to optimize we don't want to over optimize what we're trying to do here. There's obviously huge benefit, at 50x, what you can do anywhere else, or 75x, or whatever it is. Okay. So if we apply for 9.1 machine days, grant will also be considered for 4.5 machine days grant. Yeah, so the committee will they definitely look at the overall merit of the proposal, and it's not an all or nothing. So if they think that, for whatever reason, your proposal, they don't feel like they should allocate all that you requested, they'll often consider proposals for a partial allocation. If they might like one of your specific games but not the other, those kind of things. So definitely that kind of discussion happens in the committee. And so I think you should really ask for what you feel like you can most strongly justify. and then just do your best to make sure that all your all your specific aims really are well justified, and as much as possible that it's hypothesis driven. You don't want the words fishing expedition connected with your proposal in these review meetings. But sometimes you just don't know enough, and there's a lot of merit, so you just want to really explain like what are the the potential pitfalls, and show that you've thought through what could go wrong, and what are the backup plans if something does go wrong, if something is a little bit more of a new area and you're not quite sure what to expect. Okay, so that's a little bit more about what to think about with being able to convince the review panel. So I answered more than just your question, but yes, partial allocations are definitely, and you don't have to target one of those two levels of either the full or the half allocation, but those are kind of natural breakpoints. If you've got something that's close to that, you can go. I mean, really, most important thing is that you justify how much time you're asking for really solidly, based on you try to convince the committee that like here's the reasons why I think it will take at least this much time to sample this, and if you can really back that up, that really helps. If there's other literature, whatever evidence you can have to give them that you're not randomly picking, or not just randomly, but you're just sort of guessing at a time. And sometimes it's hard to know how long it's going to take for something to converge and see the behavior you want to see. But you should just talk about that and provide as much support for what you decided ultimately to ask for as possible. Okay. So how should one report the benchmark for our own system for Anton 3? Are we going to just use our own benchmark with other supercomputers? So the idea is that you'll extrapolate from the benchmarks that we've got up there on the RFP, and so it's not going to be a perfect fit. What you see there is pretty much, as Ken actually explained in the previous webinar. So that line, that maybe Ken, you want to put that back up on the screen for a sec. So that line that Ken showed, I think is the benchmarks that are in the RFP, and those represent pretty much the maximum performance that you can expect. The simplest type of system to simulate are these big globular proteins, which I think are mostly what those benchmarks are. If it's a more complicated system, it's got lipid bilayer and whatnot, you expect some distribution a little bit lower than that line, for some more complex systems, but still it should be pretty close to that. And so we're not gonna expect people to know all that nuance as you're preparing this proposal. That's just for your awareness. Basically, just take those benchmarks and try to extrapolate to where you think to where your system size lies on that sort of curve. And you can see here that the curve, I mean, you can actually plot it out yourself, I guess, right? Those numbers, it's not exactly linear. There is that sort of sweet spot in the middle, where, and then, so take that and estimate the best you can just based on number of atoms, basically. And we don't expect folks to go into more detail than that, in terms of, estimating, like, given that I want to simulate for this many microseconds, then I'm going to need this much time. You can just pull that directly from the RFP benchmarks. Feel free to ask follow-up questions if you have them as we're addressing those. You can go ahead and speak up, unmute, and ask or respond in the chat. Okay. Oh yeah. So Marcel is also answering there in the chat. Do you expect some figures in the proposal? Should we mention preliminary unpublished results, or, for instance, data already obtained on conventional computer or biochemical data obtained experimentally? Absolutely. Yeah. Anything that any evidence you can provide that supports what you're doing, the review panel will definitely want to see that, in terms of how much evidence do you have supporting sort of the aims that you're going after, and that Anton is a good fit for doing that kind of work. All those things will definitely help your case. Now we make these kind of short because we don't want people to have to go too crazy with this and be a big burden to write a 15-page or 12-page proposal. And so there's some space limitations there, but focus on the things that Marcella mentioned that are the most important for the review committee, and then you should be good. In lieu of Anton 2 or 3, what machine at PSC do you recommend for protein MD simulations? So we've got a bunch of, so we have the Bridges 2 supercomputer there at PSC, which is a general purpose supercomputer. And you can find that at if you just go to psc.edu, you'll see we've got links to our systems. Basically, Bridges 2 is the workhorse. Conventional, it's got GPUs there if you want to do GPU simulation, or it's got conventional compute nodes. So you're welcome to use that for preparing preliminary data. Especially if you hadn't have access to an Anton machine before, and then also when you end up preparing your systems, whatever, if it's a huge system, you're welcome to use those resources to help prepare, equilibrate your system. One thing I learned actually in the last meeting, our previous webinar, is that Anton 3 is a little bit better at equilibrating systems than Anton 2 or certainly Anton 1 was. So that doesn't mean you should start something brand new on Anton 3. That's not a good idea, but you can do a little bit of equilibration, less equilibration perhaps beforehand, before coming on Anton than you did in the past. So equilibration, testing, all those things you can do on the Bridges supercomputer or other high performance computing resources you have available. So let's see. Oh, and I see Marcella's already gone through and answered a lot of these, right? So Marcella, maybe you should guide me. Which ones should I answer next? Because I see the question and I see you already answered. So
yes, well, but yeah, I let you explain anyway, because you may have some different insight.
So
we
yeah.
talked about Bridges 2 and also just access machines in general.
Yeah, the NSF Access program, if you're not familiar with NSF Access, and it's just, so if you type NSF Access, just like the regular word access, then it'll give you a list of supercomputers, yeah, that you can access, across through the NSF ecosystem. Bridges 2 at PSC is one of those. And there's also other ones available. Maybe you are at one of the institutions that hosts one of those, or but if not, if you've never gone anywhere else before in that ecosystem, come to PSC, and your data will be then close to Anton should you get an allocation there, and we'll be happy to work with you on running your simulations on our conventional systems. Yep. So right. Yeah. So long simulations are going to be sort of more or preferred here, because that's what Anton 3 really addresses. But that doesn't mean that you can't justify scientifically that these may not be hundreds of microseconds, but still this is very significant long time scale that I can't really do on other supercomputers. And here's the reason why I got to do maybe spread it out across a few more 10 simulations rather than just 3 really long ones. So it's just all about justifying your approach.
Yeah, there is a question about whether they can apply for Anton 2 if the system is small, and no, Anton 2 will go away immediately after the end of the allocation, which is November 30.
That's right. So just send us that feedback. I think we're not necessarily set in stone here on the minimum size that we'll accept, for Anton 3. So definitely, if you're thinking about this and that, for your research, it's, something 250,000 atoms or bigger doesn't really make a lot of sense. Let us know that, because our goal here is not to create any artificial boundaries. We just want to, it's going to be obviously quite a limited resource. So we want to maximize its productivity, but if we cut out a lot of important science to get some more efficiency on the computational side, that's not what we're going for either. So let's just communicate with us. I think Marcella shared the email address with you. I don't know, we could put that in the chat again, maybe, Marcella. just communicate. We love to hear from you. No question is too small. So, and especially if we run out of time here, and you had a question we didn't get to, just send it to us, and we'll connect with you. Yeah. So so the sweet spot. Yeah, I think it's really 5 simulations, 6 microseconds. Yeah, I think take a look at take a look at what that would mean in terms of. I mean, I think it'll be helpful to you if you can be familiar with sort of the performance on of your systems on sort of. I don't know. Maybe Ken, is that chart you have something that we can share more broadly, or is that? I mean, I guess it's.
I'm sorry, I zoned out. Which chart?
Oh, you're the one we keep flashing up there that you made. That's really helpful.
All my charts are really helpful, Phil.
I know they are.
Just the one with that has the RFP numbers in a line.
Yeah. Well, that and what about the one with the comparison to the other? What else is out there?
That one is kind of in the SC21 paper for the Anton 3,
okay.
I believe.
Okay. Is it? Huh. I don't remember seeing that one.
It's certainly in the talk. I don't know if it's in...
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's just the real question there.
We can share some version of that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a sweet spot, like inherent sweet spot in terms of trajectory length and number of trajectories and that sort of thing. It really does depend on what your scientific questions are. I mean, there's definitely a zone where it's far, so there's not one specific sweet spot, but there's certainly a range there. And it more comes down to could you reasonably do this on some conventional system. And so most people are going to be doing 5 or 6, or they're going to do a handful of different trajectories for any study. This is what we see on Anton 2, certainly. And we expect that because you're testing different hypotheses. You need you be able to compare different systems and things. It's if you get up to, I don't know, I mean, if you're running 30 different trajectories, that's maybe getting up there. 100, that's definitely getting out there. So I think we could maybe provide some more guidance on that, but you just want to, I think you have some awareness of what would it take to run this on some other resource, and if it's crazy, if it's just it would take you, it's something where they're still long enough that it would take a really long time to get there on another system. It really depends on the size of the system too, right? So if you're running a huge system with millions of atoms, then 6 microseconds. Well, it's not going to take that long on Anton 3, but that's the point, right? Anywhere else, it would take a really, really long time. So those are the kinds of things you want to ask yourself. You just don't want to get caught saying, well, this is really something you could go get an NSF access allocation and, and quite reasonably run it on one of these other supercomputers.
There is a question about whether glycosylated PTMs amino acids are allowed. I think so, right? It's a question of creating.
If you have the parameters for them.
You need to have the parameters, yes.
Right, yeah, if you can put it in a charm or amber force field, right, then, and you've got those parameters, then pretty much anything in that realm should be fine.
And then whether government NIH are allowed to submit proposals, yes. The answer is yes.
Yep, anything not for profit, academic open science. And the PI has to be from a U.S. institution. I think we say that in the RFP, but can have collaborators, co-PIs from other countries.
Does Anton 3 support Gaussian accelerated MD simulation? I guess no. No. Did we answer them all?
Let's see, another one just came in. Looks like, how would you prepare the time needed for the enhanced sampling for membrane proteins or protein nucleic acid systems. So when you say prepare the time needed, do you mean, how do you estimate how much time it will take? Okay. Yeah, this came up in the previous meeting, right, Ken? So I think it's, yeah, so I guess you're so trying to estimate like what the time, the simulation length reduction is going to be based on using the enhanced sampling approach versus brute force.
Yeah, don't have an answer to that.
What's that, Ken?
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. Didn't one of your colleagues have something of an answer to that?
Oh, I think they probably had a hand wavy answer to that. I think it's like you do a 10 microsecond simulation, you see what happened, and then you realize it's wrong and you repeat. This is the computational steering universe, right?
I think this is more like, but for writing your proposal, right? Like what's the
Yes, I understand the problem, but I don't understand how to answer it. It's like I have no idea until you try it.
So maybe just use the numbers that are in the RFP as an upper limit.
But I mean, it's a great question. It's what speed up do you get from this enhanced sampling? No idea.
I mean, maybe this is one you could write to us. So if you send that email, I mean, I feel like, I mean, there may be some papers or some things, right, that people could look at, or, I mean, that was kind of some of the.
Yeah, follow up by email is always a good answer.
I think a follow up by email, maybe we could it's a great question. So obviously you stumped us a little bit. And let us send us this question. Let us bounce it around a little bit and see, if there's some suggestions there to help. Certainly you would expect it to be an upper bound, if you compare to sort of brute force, and maybe there's enough literature and things, maybe related to what you're doing to get a idea for what you would expect, a reasonable reduction to be in the enhanced sample, when you employ the enhanced sampling approach.
Then it says, would you offer a test run in Anton 3 outside the grant? Unfortunately, I don't think we can do that.
If the idea is to get numbers for your proposal, we won't have the Anton 3 until well after the proposals are due. So email, if it's for the proposal, Jeff, just email us. We'll give some guidance, and I think this is something where we can also prepare the review committee to understand. So I think we'll give our best thoughts and pull that together, and reply to you if you'll send us a message of that email. But then we'll also prepare the review committee with our best thoughts on this question, so that they'll be able to judge fairly for those who are taking that approach. Great questions. Okay, was there anything we missed from someone, or a follow-up that anyone had? You may want to speak up. Feel free to unmute and just ask, or if you really just want to type it out, we still got the chat there.
Somebody asked about a 20x aspect ratio, and I just tried it, and it says long double argument out of range.
I don't know if that was in this one or not.
That was in the previous.
The previous
session.
Yeah. So for those of you coming from Anton 2, I think you may recall that previously Anton 2, we wanted to hear from you. Yeah. So if the aspect ratio, if one dimension of your simulation box is much longer than the others, or say one dimension is much shorter than another one, we do want to, it was on Anton 2, we wanted to hear from you if it was more than like a 1.5x, one side was 1.5x longer than another one. Anton 3 is better at that. But some of the previous call asked if 20x longer was okay.
Well,
And
so Anton 2 had severe performance problems with fast that related to the Ashbrook ratio, and they're not as severe with Anton 3. But once you get up to like 20x, now there's going to be some upper bound on the size of the box that's probably like 1,000 angstroms, but I'm not sure what it is.
yeah, so if you have so again, anything see is if you have questions about anything else related to preparing your proposal, just go ahead and send us an email at that email address that's been shared here. And but especially if there's something that you think might be a little weird, so again, very large aspect ratio for your box, in certain dimensions. That's another, that's one thing where you could reach out to us just to confirm. So if you have any doubts, just reach out. We can help confirm. No, this is okay. If you're left with any doubts, no reason to be wondering about anything. Just shoot us an email as you're preparing your proposal, and we'll get back to you and help you any way we can with that. All right. So then we've got links there for survey in the chat. So please take a minute, respond there, let us know what we did well, what we could improve, and thanks for attending. Any last comments from any other colleagues?
Thank you very much to DESRES and Phil and Rosita.
Yep, thank you all.
Hope to see you all next year.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.